Car Lifestyle Podcast
with host
Seth Rose from Exotics Rally,
Tminus, Gabe Florido
from Car Lifestyle.
Welcome back to the Car Lifestyle Podcast. Today we are in lovely Lime Rock, Connecticut on location. I'm Seth Rose, and with me is my co-host, Tminus.
I always screw this up. I can never just say hello. I get very nervous.
I know.
What's going on, guys?
He hasn't had a drink today. And today we have the opportunity through certain friends of ours to interview the one and only, I would say, multifaceted racing legend.
Living legend.
To some,
yeah.
Living legend, the proprietor of Lime Rock Racetrack, none other than Skip Barber. Skip, welcome to the podcast.
Nice to be here.
Excellent. So we got very lucky today. We left early from Long Island to head on up here.
Like 5 a.m.
And we figured we'd avoid the traffic because I'm driving my newly delivered Ford Focus RS Turbo, and T-Minus took his Porsche GT3. We figured we'd do a little rally up here.
Yeah, a little bit of road drive, and then we'll beat the traffic and get here early. That way we don't stress you out because, I wanted to be
Or
punctual.
ourselves.
Right. And then if we're here early enough, we can get some breakfast, waltz in a little bit early, and then everything else is up to you.
Well,
So-
hopefully we get a couple laps around the track.
Yeah, well, that would be very nice, considering I just did my break-in mileage.
Yeah.
What, on the way here?
Yeah, on the way here. Now I'm up to about 270 miles, so I'm good. I hope.
We got to get Skip driving that thing.
Yeah, that should be fun. I think you'll enjoy that car. I will tell you, I've driven a lot of different cars, and that by far is probably one of the best handling cars I've driven. It's really impressive. Anyway, so Skip, why don't we get a little history of Skip Barber? Who is Skip Barber? Where did you grow up? A little history?
I grew up in Philadelphia, went to school in Cambridge, and then kind of never left New England.
Okay.
And when I was in college, sports cars were very popular. It was everyday cars, very different than now. And so going sports car racing was kind of a logical thing to do for somebody my age. I mean, colleges actually had car clubs that competed against each
Really?
other. Harvard against Yale in cars.
By the way, he's very modest. He was like,
Yes.
I went to college in Cambridge.
I
Instead
did
of being
I did a
went
little
to Harvard.
history on
Yeah,
Skip.
so did I.
Did a little history, English
Yeah, he's better
major,
educated than
right.
both of us.
Definitely.
Yeah, well, nothing to brag about. I completely blew that opportunity. I was completely focused on cars and going out to Wellesley and never went to class. And I mean, it's a bad story, not a good story.
No.
It's a bad story, but the success has been terrible for you.
Ironically.
It worked out.
Well, I don't think I learned anything in college that helped me with anything that came afterwards, but they suggested I take a year off between my junior and senior year. I mean, we kind of mutually agreed on that as they were pushing me out the door.
Yeah.
And I went into Merchant Marine and
cool.
was on a deep sea tanker that went up and down the East Coast, took a few days. And there was a fundamental problem. Everybody would get back on board drunk.
Wow.
And not get any work done the next couple of days. So I went, for the good of mobile gas, I went into the beer business on the ship. Got it really
Very
organized.
creative.
Got it really organized. When we would pull into Beaumont, Texas, or someplace, the beer truck would beat the food truck there. And I learned a lot about business.
Wow.
A lot
That's
about
awesome.
business. Yeah, it was great.
I'm a military vet myself. I was in the Army. So, yeah, I definitely respect that. And that's cool. Merchant Marine is cool. Get to see the world, no?
You respect carrying cases of beer up and down the gangplank?
Absolutely. I mean, that's how I got pregnant, was through alcohol.
Okay.
Oh, God. So, so back when you were in school, you started to get into the racing scene?
I started to get into sports cars.
Okay.
I had no money, but I had a very then 20-year-old MG, which I drove the daylights out of.
So what was your first car?
Well, that's a bad question. I started driving when I was 11.
Okay.
Up and down the alley behind my parents' house.
Were your parents into cars? Is it a family trait?
Yeah, my dad was a Ford dealer.
Oh,
cool.
And this is actually, I think, a neat story. We lived in a city, and the alley was a block long, and I could back out drive up to one end, back down. So I did half as many miles going backwards as I had to be the world's greatest reverse driver.
That's awesome. That's super awesome.
Wow, that's wild. So your father owned the dealership?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. So that was back in, I'm assuming, in the 50s?
Yeah, 50s, 60s. His grandfather actually got the franchise from Henry Ford. It was one of the first
Wow.
Ford
There's
dealerships
some
in the
incredible
East Coast.
Ford history in your blood.
Yeah, it didn't turn out so great, but yeah.
Okay, so you had some Ford activity back then. Was a Ford one of your first cars?
Yeah. Yes, I had a Ford business coupe in high school. 6-cylinder, slow.
Did
Well,
you,
I
did,
mean, you-
did
he
you ever
coulda
get a
had the
Mustang?
Edsel,
Did you ever
right?
get a Mustang or a Shelby?
I got what my parents lent me.
Well, that's cool. Well, it's okay. So you come from a little bit of a history with the family and cars. So, and then that progressed up to your college years, you were saying, and you started getting involved in car clubs.
Yes.
Okay. And when did you start getting into any type of competitive racing?
You couldn't race then until you were 21.
Oh, really?
Which was a real handicap for Americans. Huge handicap. So when I was 21, I started with a Bug-Eye Sprite.
Okay. Did you start out with any type of... I've seen a lot of people progression with go-kart racing and things of that nature. How did you start?
No, I started with a Sprite. Go-karts weren't as common. They existed, but they weren't as common. My problem, and this, whenever you say Harvard, this sounds weird, I had no money. I went through college completely on scholarships, and I literally had 4 or 5 jobs at the same time.
Wow.
So doing any kind of racing, anything automotive, was really difficult. And I didn't do much racing as a result, just a small number of races a year. And you don't get very far that way.
Did you have any sponsors back
That
then,
was
or
my
they
next
really,
question.
or they really
No,
didn't exist? It was
no.
just blood money.
Blood money, and I was too shy to be any good at getting that. I didn't ask somebody else if I could drive their car. I just didn't know how to do it.
Right. Do
I
you
got over that.
Do you actually do work on cars yourself? Do you turn wrenches?
I don't know anything about it. No.
Nothing. Okay. I wasn't sure.
Did you
So-
Did you catch the end of that? He was like, "I got over that."
Yes, indeed. It does take time. But, always our listeners are so concerned, and they're always asking about sponsors and how you get sponsors. And, even with one of my businesses, I own an automotive accessory business where we do wraps and vinyl and paint protection. And people are always asking me to sponsor because, they're always trying to reach out and get sponsors for everything. Of course, nobody wants to pay for anything. So it's a difficult task.
Well, it's not that you don't want to pay. You shouldn't. I mean, what are you going to get? And those guys that are asking you for help are thinking about what they need, not what they can do for you.
Correct. Right.
And they
Usually,
completely
yeah.
miss the point.
Right, they missed the target. Right. So a lot of our listeners are always curious about sponsors and how you gain sponsors and how you maintain sponsors.
You get sponsors by being good, for starters, and I think being personable. But you got to have a story not a make-up story, a real story for the people you're talking to about what you're going to do for them.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're going to give you money instead of spending it.
Or they're going to give you product, right? Tires and oil and.
But that's money.
Sure.
And instead of doing something else with it, it's got to be a reason.
So so when you were racing and you were out there, did you have any professional races?
Yeah, I had this is probably going to be too long a story. I never had the success that my skill warranted. I was good, but I couldn't turn that into anything. So yeah, I ended up doing some professional races. I did 6 or 7 Formula One races.
Whoa. Wow.
On merit, didn't pay for it. In lousy cars. I always got to drive a car somebody was trying to sell. Seriously.
Wow.
I mean, that wasn't unusual. You put a guy in that can do well with it, and somebody will buy it, hopefully. I I had some good professional races. My first professional race, I beat Jim Clark in
Wow.
an identical car at Motorsports in Canada. He
That's
said,
awesome.
"Boy, I'll see you in England." And I didn't even know where that was.
That's awesome.
And how old were you at that point in your life?
I was late 20s.
Late 20s?
Mid-20s, yeah, mid-20s.
How long did it take you to get from your first car into Formula One?
Took a long, long time, but not a lot of races. I never could afford to do, full seasons.
So legit, natural talent.
Yeah, lots of natural talent, which then made it ironic that I ended up in the racing school business.
Yes, which we will get to in just a minute. So, in your racing career, were there any unfortunate incidents?
No. Oh, yeah, a lot of things broke. I never ran into anything, though.
Okay.
No, that's
That's
what
sick.
you mean.
So you kept the shiny side up and just things
Yeah.
broke.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. It's
crazy.
That's amazing.
It is.
So when you mentioned the school, which has become extremely popular over the years. I remember as a child, I collected car and driver magazines, and there were always ads for Skip Barber Racing School. And I remember back when, oh God, I'm gonna
Probably 87, 88.
yeah, 88, 89, about a little over 20 years ago. There were always ads with BMWs.
Yes.
So take us through the whole evolution of the Skip Barber Racing School, and where did it start?
It started here at Lime Rock and at another track in Connecticut, Thompson. I lived in New England in 1975.
Oh, wow, that long ago.
Yeah, and the first big step was when we started having our own races in our own cars, where the concept was this is all about driving, learning to be a race car driver, not who had the fastest car, who had the best engineer, who could make the car work the best. We really started spec racing, which I'm not sure everybody
Really?
thinks. Yeah, I'm not sure everybody thinks that's a good idea, but it's great for driver training. It's
Well, what is spec racing for our listeners?
Spec racing is like sailboat racing. Everybody has the same equipment.
It's all equivalent.
Yeah, we took it a little further in that we kept the cars. In most kinds of, Indianapolis cars are now really spec cars, but you take them home. I'm sure a Penske car is much better than the guy at the back of the grid's version of the same car. With us, it wasn't that way. You actually drew for cars.
Really?
And it was all about racing.
And what kind of cars did you start with back in the 70s?
Formula Fords.
Formula Fords.
They were the popular beginning race car all around the world.
Wow.
And we ended up with the most of them. We were far and away the biggest operation of that kind in the world. We went from New England to Florida in the winter, then to the Midwest, then finally full-time base at California. And we ended up with 5 different bases around the country with race series out of all of them.
And you started this on your own?
Yeah.
Wow. Did you have not that it's any of my business, you don't have to answer, but were there seed investors or?
No
it was just-
no investors, no nothing, no money. But I had a huge advantage. There's something that I call the racer's attitude. That's I'm going to win. I'm going to try my hardest. Nothing else matters.
Second places for losers and all that.
Well,
type of
I'm
jazz.
thinking more in terms of effort. I'll do
Very
I'll,
ambitious.
I'll do anything to make it happen.
Sure.
And so when I started the race, being naive can be a good thing. All we set out to do now, this is starting a business, right?
Right.
We didn't think of it as a business. We thought of it as going racing. And we just set out to do it better than anybody had ever done it. And so this is running a business now. All our effort went into the best we could do, the best product. We didn't worry about profit as long as we could buy more cars and more parts and more trucks, and not take any money out of the business. And on that kind of racer's work ethic, if you will, we built something that was pretty terrific. I unfortunately sold it. I really screwed up and sold it about 15 years ago now came along the investors to a big fund who were going to help me do more things with it, things I really wanted to do. And I picked the wrong guys.
Right. Now, so how did it evolve over the years? You said you had 5 locations. It evolved to 5 locations. Did it expand from there, or?
Yeah, we had 5 bases. Bases where people lived, and we kept cars and had shops. We went to 15 or 20 racetracks around the country.
And I guess there was an evolution in different cars that you used, and I think you wound up getting to the BMW point.
The BMW point was for street driving kinds of cars.
Okay.
Legal cars with doors.
Right.
E30 M3.
Yes, thank you. And boy, you didn't used to want to buy a white M3.
I still want
my
one.
God.
I still want one.
We both want those
Except that
unicorns.
they're like $80,000 now for a car with 200,000 miles.
Yes, they were great cars.
They're unicorns.
They
at
are,
this
yeah.
point.
And they were our first school cars. We wouldn't do a driving school until we wanted to have a Porsche or a BMW. And BMW spoke first, and they were our partner for a long time. And then we switched to Chrysler when the Viper came out.
Oh, really?
Chrysler was a great car company for about 10 years, and we had them in that period. And they provided all the power for our single-seaters. We had a professional series, which ran as, what would you first act in IndyCar racing. It was a major step in that kind of racing.
A lot of power in the Viper.
A lot of power in a
Yeah,
Viper.
I've never been a fan. I personally don't think they handle that wonderful.
It's funny. The Viper was what people came to drive, and when they went home, they bought Neons. Well, we used Neons too, and they were great little cars. I mean, they didn't have a great reputation for quality, but they were good little cars.
Nimble, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's fun.
That is funny.
So where is Skip Barber Racing School today?
Skip Barber Racing School has been sold a couple times, and they're a lot smaller than they used to be.
Okay, so you have nothing to do with it at this point?
Nothing.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. I had no idea.
I thought maybe you might have still had creative control, or
I have nothing. No, sadly. I mean, I screwed that up.
It happens. I took that leap of faith about 7 years ago, sold the business, worst mistake of my life.
Yeah.
But now you've been involved with Lime Rock for how long?
Since 1983. Well, I raced here, and then we started the school here in 75.
right.
And in 83, I put a group of school graduates together to buy it. We were worried about the guy that owned it had raced, and he had finished racing, was going on to other things, and we were worried about what was going to happen.
sure.
And so we borrowed all the money and we bought it.
Oh, I see. I thought this was something recent. See, I don't know much about the history of Lime Rock. I was here about 20 years ago. So you've owned it since the mid-'80s?
Yeah, mid-'80s, yeah.
Mid-'80s. And tell us a little about Lime Rock. What's how many tracks are there? How many courses?
Well, it's, I don't know if anybody's listening that really is not familiar with road racing, but it is a road racing course. It's not an oval. It's not a straight line drag strip. It's got right and left turns and a lot of elevation changes. It's built on a beautiful piece of land that was a potato farm and a gravel pit, and it's in a lovely section of northwest Connecticut in Litchfield County, which is a pretty nice place to live.
Litchfield. Orange is the New Black. This takes place in Litchfield.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The TV show?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Side note.
Anyhow, side note, and it's called Lime Rock Park. It really is a park. I mean, it's all green. There are no grandstands. That's unusual for a racetrack.
That is true.
Unusual.
And
That's true.
It's a great place to watch, and it's a neat track to drive. It's 1.5 mile track. We have other smaller courses, autocross courses, skid pads, things like that.
Skid pad is cool.
That is neat. Now, do you do mostly professional sanction races, or is it more club geared?
Most road racing tracks have a couple of major, what we call spectator events, where you're dependent on selling tickets a year, and then rent themselves out to clubs the rest of the time. So a place like this is busy almost every day of the year.
Wow.
And it only sells tickets 4 or 5 weekends a year.
Wow.
And they're the big events.
And
Right.
can you give us specs on the track, length and how many turns and And what are the sanctioned race series that come here beside IMSA?
So it's a mile and a half around,
Okay.
6 corners. Looks very simple when you look at a map. When you start driving around it, the elevation changes have a huge impact, make it a lot harder. It's not simple. It's really
challenging,
difficult,
yeah.
hugely challenging.
Really?
It's one of the fastest on average speed racetracks in North America. It doesn't have a long straightaway for the speed, but the corners are all fast. Consequently, we added 2 optional corners a few years ago that you can run or not, which really pull the speed down and require very different skills. The IMSA weekend, which is our biggest modern car weekend, it's this July 22nd and 23rd, they run one of those slow corners, which they call a chicane, which I hate.
Really?
Yeah, because if you don't, there's a traditional uphill at Lime Rock. Most modern race cars literally take off. I mean,
They
take
launch.
off and maybe go upside down.
Really?
So the chicane pulls the speed way down.
Gotcha.
So it's an uphill chicane at a low speed, no issue.
Wow.
No issue, yeah.
Sick.
Interesting. Do you offer club memberships here?
Yeah, we have a club here, yes, which is aimed at guys that really like to drive. It's not an ostentatious group as some clubs are.
Yeah,
You
well, I have a membership over at Monticello, so I know what
I
that's like.
feel for you.
I have not been there in 2 years.
Okay, well, nobody here. We have a club day this afternoon. I'm serious. Stick around. Nobody here talks about who's got the most money or the biggest helicopter. None of that.
Yeah, well,
You'd never know.
Monticello, plain and simple, is, for in layman's terms, a dick measuring competition.
Yeah. Should we be talking about this?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. Seth is talking about it. I'm in the free and clear.
Perfectly fine.
Our we got lucky. I could say our goals were much higher. We got lucky in that our first members, were really decent guys that loved driving, and that set the tone. And we haven't gotten the kind of guy you're
That's
talking
great.
about,
Yeah.
and we've discouraged them, and they pick up the signals pretty quickly. We have a fair number of guys that belong to both, and they prefer here.
But I'm sure that also has a lot to do with your school and how you promote driver education and advanced driver education. I think
I'm going to disagree with you.
Really?
I think it doesn't have much to do with that, but our club's emphasis is on teaching people how to drive. So maybe I do agree with you, but it's not because literally of the school. It's the way we do it, which is very school-like.
I gotta say, it didn't take us long to get here.
No.
I thought it was gonna take a lot longer.
I know Seth's like, bro, we have to leave 3 hours early. It's a 3-hour drive. I'm
It took
like,
us 2 hours and 18 minutes.
yes, but Seth, you were also not doing the speed limit. You were also doing 3 times the speed limit.
Not quite, but
He was.
as soon as I saw the
Legit.
Connecticut sign, then you open it up.
Then he was like, there's no points on my license in this state. Let's go.
You need 2 licenses.
And that's when the fun begins. Well, if you have a New York license, points don't transfer from any other state. Only Quebec and Ontario. So
Okay.
I have about 90
Works
tickets.
for me.
And they're all paid for, no points. So interesting enough with driver's licenses. As far as the clubs go, is it when you're a club member, are there certain club days? Is that how it works?
Yes, it's a lot less club days a year than a place like Monticello, which is primarily a club.
Right.
We are primarily a racetrack, but it's enough time. It's enough time.
Right, and I'm sure the price also dictates that differently. It differentiates. What is your average club membership?
We sell memberships for $25,000, $50,000, and $100,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's comparable.
And it's different
Monticello.
numbers of days, obviously.
Right, obviously.
With the
And do you provide cars for people to race that don't have?
we have cars for rent. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I think you do the radical class here, right?
Radicals come fairly often to club days. We don't have a radical racing class.
Oh.
The only racing class we have are Miatas, and we have a Miata race tomorrow.
That's cool.
In fact, we have 3 Miata
Momentum
races
racing.
tomorrow. Yeah, but don't knock it.
I don't. I respect it.
You know, I had
You got to be a driver. You can't lift.
I had never sat in a Miata till we started the club. You know, I thought they were just cheap imitations of an old Lotus Elan. They are very nice cars, good handling, and they handle better than. I mean, the traction's way beyond the power. That's a good thing when you're starting.
Sure.
And they're great. They're great learning cars. No
I mean,
question.
I've driven a ton of cars, and I feel like my GT3 is still, ahead of me. I feel like I don't know the car well enough to push it 10/10 or even 8/10.
If it's not ahead of you, you're
a lot of car.
awfully good.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you currently race, get on the track, and take some turns?
No, my eyes have gotten lousy, and I am the world's all-time late breaker now, late apexer. Whoops, there's the corner.
Gotcha.
So I just can't. I can't go fast enough to have fun.
Right. I gotcha. Okay.
But his fast and our fast are two different worlds.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
You know, I really miss it.
I'm sure you do.
Really miss it.
That's your passion.
It's in your blood. Do you have any children that are involved in racing?
No.
No?
No.
We talked earlier before we started the podcast, and you had mentioned that you have some classic cars.
Yeah, you know, it's, I think, pretty standard. People that it is standard. People that go racing, that as many of them are used to be car dealers, and when they got to the point that they could buy something for fun, I mean, people buy what they wanted, didn't have when they were a kid.
Sure.
I mean, that's a pretty. I mean, if people collect cars,
That's what I've been doing now.
Yeah, that's
is
where I'm
buying
at.
stuff from
Yeah.
my childhood that I couldn't afford then. Now I'm buying them, restoring them, and having some fun.
Yeah. So I've been fortunate enough, and that's because when I sold the school, I had some money, and I've got 8 or 9 cars, a real mix of cars, not all great handling cars. I mean, I have a
Just
couple.
things you liked.
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple of Cadillac convertibles. They're not
That's cool.
great handling cars.
Yeah, but they're great.
From which period? 50s, 60s?
50s, yeah, which were the best looking, and that's not because that's
most
what
distinctive.
I wanted as a kid. I didn't want a Cadillac as
Right.
a kid. I wanted a Ferrari as a kid. And I have 2 of them. I'm fortunate enough to have 2 late 60s Ferraris, one
Oh, really?
coupe, a car called a GTB,
Yes.
which some people think is one of the 2 best looking Ferraris ever made. And I have a convertible roadster, really, of the same era, 330 GTS.
Very nice.
I have a 300 SL Mercedes convertible.
What year is that? It's not a Gullwing.
It's a Gullwing with
It's
a
a Gullwing
no roof.
convertible.
No roof.
Yeah.
Right.
They made the Gullwing,
Right.
the coupe first.
Correct.
And then they made the convertible after that.
Right.
That is an
In an effort
Incredible.
to sell
That's
cars.
hot.
It wasn't
It's a
easy
great
to
car.
sell a Gullwing, apparently.
my father took his road test in a Gullwing.
Oh,
Really?
God.
Yes, it was his roommates in college.
The hard life
Yeah.
of Seth Rose and
And it was my father's roommate. He was a very wealthy kid. Went to the University of Miami.
such a hard life.
And my it's a funny story. My father failed the road test like 3 times.
Okay.
And the only way he passed was his friend stood across the block, because back then you had to pull in between 2 cones. And my father's friend held his cigarette, and when he went up, it was to go to the right. When he went down, it was to go to the left. My father drove a Gullwing, and he passed.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this guy lent your father his Gullwing?
Going. He not only did he lend it to him, he left it to him because he passed away, and he left it to him.
What?
Yeah.
Where's that car
But
now?
we'll
That car was
Established.
sold many years ago.
And we've
For-
established why they, went to Miami. Not Harvard, sorry.
It was a party school. And my father did
a neat story.
inherit it from him, and my father at the time had no interest in the car really, and he sold it for very little money. Back
Oh my
then.
God.
Had it-
Wait,
still
let's
had it
find out
for-
what else Skip has.
Let's reverse this. I'll interview you. I mean, that is a good story.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. Yeah, my father was always into cars, but he never owned anything cool. It's crazy.
My father didn't.
And he never backed up to park.
Yeah. No, he drove with 2 feet, my father. In an automatic all the time.
Speaking of that, I just saw in the news earlier this morning that the first death in a Tesla
Tesla. autonomous driving.
It was in the autonomous mode.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yes, in Florida.
And the feds are investigating.
Yeah. How do you feel about autonomous driving? I mean, you've seen, I mean, at your distinct age, you've seen the evolution of cars and electronics and computerization, traction control.
Yeah, Skip
all these
Barber
things.
puts the driving in driving, and Tesla takes it out of it.
So how do you feel about that?
For a certain element of the population, I mean, up here in this part of the world, there's a staggering number of retired people. It'll be good there, except we'll never have it up here. And in the city, it wouldn't be all bad. I mean, if you wanted to work while you were driving to work.
It's so crazy.
But I can't see it. I guess if you were driving I mean, I don't even like cruise control.
I mean,
don't
here's
either.
my problem with it. I think the first thing to really become autonomous is going to be tractor trailers, because they probably create the most havoc on the road, and they are the heaviest vehicles on the road.
And the most boring job.
Oh, absolutely. It's
Which
monotonous.
is easy to go to sleep if you're bored.
Right, it's monotonous and it's unsafe at high speeds. Collectively, it's going to slow down the highway system tremendously and create a tremendous amount of traffic.
Oh.
So that's my take on it. But what the government is saying is it's going to lower emissions, and it's going to lower the death rate on the roads.
You mentioned the Tesla, and Tesla and autonomous are not the same thing. And I think the Tesla's a quite marvelous car.
So do I.
And
It's an amazing machine.
tell you-
Have you driven one?
oh, absolutely. The
Ludicrous mode?
boy, acceleration, wow.
It's ridiculous.
So we make snow here. I'm going someplace with this. This is not a commercial. We make snow here in the winter. We started that 2 years ago on the autocross course so we could do winter driving programs.
We need to be in on that.
And
I need to bring the focus for that one.
Yeah.
Audi brought a bunch of cars. I mean, it's neat. Tesla brought a car, an all-wheel drive, an all-wheel drive Tesla.
The truck?
No, you can now get an all-wheel drive.
Really?
Yeah, motor in each end.
Wow.
Tesla, same battery though.
I didn't know that.
Yep. And it was pretty good. Then they sent an engineer, and he spent time here reprogramming the car. Nothing went as fast, nothing on the planet around the autocross course
Really?
in the snow as that Tesla. It was, I mean, we time people. This is a fun winter activity, and we have winter autocrosses is what we call them.
Sick.
And that car was unbelievable.
Really?
Yes, absolutely. Guaranteed, swear.
And it's automatic.
Yes.
It's a big
automatic
car.
with no gears.
It's a big, heavy car
this is
with
crazy.
one
Yeah.
gear and
This is
it's
crazy.
direct drive.
Yeah.
And it's a monster.
Yeah.
It's such a
A
fast
good-looking
car.
monster, I think.
It is
Yeah.
so good looking. And the door handles slide out when you're by them. I love things like that,
It's very electronic, very advanced, and but unfortunately, like you were saying in the news, there was a death down in Florida, which they're investigating as to why. We don't know the full story of it, but yeah, that was the first autonomous driving death.
But that's
recorded.
going to happen a lot. I mean,
Yeah, of course.
What if the electrical systems go down in the car? You're dead because you're taking a nap because you got an autopilot.
I don't know enough to know, but there's got to be fail-safe systems. I mean, there'll be something taking a picture of your face, and when your eyes close, the car will shut off or something.
There's got to be something that alerts you if something starts to go.
Look at all the government-mandated stuff we have on a normal car. Can you imagine what it's
I
going to be
know.
like on
We
something
see
like that?
everything in this country last.
Right.
Like the Ford RS that I just got. The RS has been out in Europe for 3 years, 4 years. It's been out since 2010.
Yep.
6 years.
Yeah, look at
We
that.
get everything last here.
Including good headlights, all kinds of things.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
So,
we were late for HIDs. Yeah.
So you got
We're
a
late
couple.
for the current lights we don't have.
So you got a couple of old Ferraris. You were saying. Anything else old that's notable that you enjoy?
Yeah, I have a 356 Porsche. That's the first Porsche, really. Air-cooled motor in the back, very lightweight, small car. that had started with a version of the Volkswagen air-cooled engine. I have one with a very modern motor.
Very robust.
Very robust. It looks absolutely stock, but is a rocket.
That's awesome.
And that is a shockingly modern car. You know, if you ever have the chance, that I've been fortunate enough to drive a variety of cars that are 40 or 50 years old, you realize they're not the same one to another. I mean, there was huge differences. And an old Porsche is a much nicer car to drive than an old Ferrari. What?
Yeah.
The Ferrari
It's
costs
a big difference.
God knows how many times as much. And
Ferraris fell apart. I mean, I had an older Ferrari. The switchery was so bad. It was just horrifying. But a Porsche just seemed much, it was put together much
It was
better.
put together better, but it was better to drive. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you have the choice of either one on a Sunday morning, you take the Porsche.
So I take it you drive that?
I drive that, yeah. I have an old wooden Ford station wagon. I'm not quite sure I bought that. But I have a hot-rodded motor in it.
Oh, cool.
And which you can't tell by looking at it.
We like sleepers.
Yeah.
I have a sleeper.
Which is what?
I have a 1989 Honda CRX SI
Okay.
with 550 horsepower.
Good God.
And it weighs 1,700 pounds.
What kind of motor?
It's a B series motor, a 1.6 cylinder, and it has a huge turbo and internals, and I had the block sleeved and better cams and bigger injectors, like 1,000cc injectors, ball bearing turbo.
Does the transmission live?
Yeah, I changed all the
Dangerous.
synchros.
This car is dangerous.
This thing is crazy. I
It's
changed all the
dangerous.
synchros to carbon fiber.
And is it still just front wheel drive?
Yes, sir.
Oh my God.
It is so much fun.
No, it's dangerous.
It's a little dangerous.
It's dangerous. A lot of torque steer. Thing's a
I
wild
bet.
animal.
It is a monster, and I built it to ruin egos, because when you're driving you're driving a Ferrari F430, and a guy in a Z06.
No, I totally got the picture.
Yeah,
I totally got the
guy
picture.
Guy in a Z06 beats you. You think, all right, the guy has a Corvette. He's got $100,000 into it. I don't care. I'm driving a Ferrari. When you get beat by a CRX, a big guy like me in a little CRX, you go home and kick your dog. So that's why I built it. So yeah, but no, it is a lot of fun. A lot of fun. You would like driving it.
Yeah, that's great.
It's interesting, that's for sure.
It has coilovers, has bigger brakes, bigger calipers, bigger rotors, pads, steel braided lines. It's done right. It's built right.
And you never drive it.
I have not driven it in a
He
year
has
and a half.
not gotten out of this Porsche GT3 in 2 months. Can I just tell you? I helped him find the car, and after he bought the car and he drove it for the first time, he was so nervous about driving it.
I was
I remember the
nervous.
first day.
I was.
And then ever since, he has not. He just can't stop driving it. It's just
Yeah.
one of those things.
It's the best thing I've ever driven. Ever. Ever. Like,
What has been your favorite car to either drive or on the track?
My favorite, not old car, BMW built. We had a long relationship at Lime Rock with them, and which came to an end a couple years ago, and it just ran its course. And they built a limited edition Lime Rock car to celebrate
That was
relationship.
orange, right?
The
Was
orange
that
one,
orange?
yeah.
The orange
The
M3.
E92, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. And I have one of them. Yes, a manual transmission, no extras. Traditional BMW kind of thing, not even power.
it's sick
seats.
though. You're driving your
It's-
own car
I
from your own track.
Yeah, it's
That's who can do that.
Not many.
anyhow.
I have a question. Did in your Formula One days, or in your track history, or you being a notable figure, have you ever met legends like Art and Senna?
I didn't know Senna. I knew guys I know Mario Andretti. I mean, everybody knows Mario Andretti, but I knew people from Mark Donahue was a good friend of mine. I knew Ronnie Peterson. You probably never heard of him. He
I have
was
not.
the fastest man in the world in the late 70s. I knew Frank Williams, who Senna drove for. I knew a lot of those guys.
Michael Schumacher and people like that?
No, they're all a little too. I was out of it by then.
Right.
I knew Licky Lauda, but
He's a legend too.
yeah, he came before Shoemaker.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's the F1 guys are a little more arrogant now.
It's different. It's very different than
they
it was.
were.
Yeah.
They're much more hidden from the public, from the car to the garage to the motorhome.
They're more like rock stars now, I think. They're
Yeah, and
a
they-
different
and they-
philosophy.
The new generations all have the sense of entitlement that they now have.
Well,
also.
you said they're like rock stars. They think they're rock
Right.
stars, and they're paid like rock stars.
They
You're
are
not
paid
kidding.
like rock stars.
I'll take that paycheck any day.
Everybody thinks. Every football player thinks it was better when he played. And
true.
everybody's a wimp now, and
But it's very different times. I mean, a Formula One race team, I was told, I could be wrong, and I don't know if my statistics are correct, but somebody told me it costs $1 billion a year, roughly, to run an F1 race team. And that's an awful lot of money.
Yeah, yes, it sure is. I don't know if that's true or not, but it costs. They get 500 guys working for them.
And it's incredible, the amount of cars, the amount of parts, the amount
And
of
the
tools.
R&D, like they got to have their own
Yeah.
wind tunnel and their own aero guy and their own AutoCAD guy.
Guys, plural guys.
Yeah. So it's a much different world now. Would you consider yourself more into speed or handling?
Handling.
Great question.
Handling. So
Yeah.
you're not into speed whatsoever? It doesn't do anything for you?
If you have a half decent car, you don't even know you're going fast.
Right.
And I think any competent race car driver gets nothing from speed. It's all relative. If you're in a corner going 130 miles an hour, which is pretty fast in a corner, right beside somebody or passing them, the speed is 2 or 3 miles an hour. That's the
Right.
difference in the two of you. It's not
Passing.
130.
Oh, I know. I was on Monticello in my Lamborghini Superleggera, and I was getting passed by Lotus Elises, and I'm like, really? But it's an incredible handling car, the Lotus, in comparison, and the weight difference. And people don't realize, and a lot of people, and we know this, and of course I'm sure, of course you know it, that horsepower and weight. Weight is probably one of the most significant things when it comes to horsepower and torque.
Absolutely.
Certainly in terms of fun, weight is the enemy. The lighter the car, the better.
Right.
And of course, the lighter the car, the better it performs.
Right, and that's why these spec Miatas seem to be so much fun on the track.
Yes.
They're extremely light and nimble and very stiff chassis.
But they don't have too much power for the chassis. If you put 3 times as much horsepower in there, that probably wouldn't be a good car.
Right, but then you would change the dynamic
start
of the car.
all over.
Right,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah. But back on your question about speed, I never ran Indianapolis, but if you were pounding around there as fast as you could, as fast as anybody could, you wouldn't be thinking you're going fast. You get right up next to the wall, you think you're going fast, or when you miss the apex by a foot or two, you think you're going fast. Suddenly the picture's not so good. But the speed itself, think about flying in an airplane.
Yeah.
You fall asleep.
Yeah, it gets boring, gets monotonous. I've been on Pocono many times, and I drove on Daytona once, which is an incredible track. But the degrees of the banking is
Well, if you go slow, you feel like
unbelievable.
you're going to fall off.
You do, and if you just try walking up the banking, you get exhausted and you have to sit
Yeah,
down.
you can't get up that whole thing.
It's rough.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's rough, but yes, that's definitely interesting. And a lot of our listeners, I would say more of our listeners are probably street racers and things like that. How do you feel about street racing?
I feel that thinking about getting arrested. I think driving really hard on the street is fine. Now I'm talking about driving through a corner on a country road fast and not ending up on the wrong side of the road.
True.
I think that's just great. If you're under control, I think weaving out of traffic in Manhattan is like a madman is not necessarily a good idea. I think driving straight down the New Jersey Turnpike at 95 miles an hour, if you don't get a ticket's fine. I don't think doing that in the right lane and switching lanes every 80 feet's a great idea. It just makes people mad. Makes people mad.
Sure does.
And I don't think I understand the question.
Well, the reason I ask is because so many times there are people that you read about in the paper just recently, 2 days ago, on the Cross Island Parkway, which is not the best parkway to be driving fast on. A 22-year-old in a Mercedes-Benz E63 AMG was speeding and made a quick lane change across 3 lanes and wound up going over the divider and flipped the car and died. And right away, people start blaming, well, he shouldn't have been driving that car, or he had no experience. And people start blaming everybody that they possibly can.
Yeah, speed kills, but speed doesn't kill. Your lack of intelligence is what killed you. Speed obviously
I think
has
it's lack of intelligence. I think it's a lack of experience behind the wheel.
Yeah.
I think that experience behind the wheel speaks volumes for people's driving abilities.
Well, the incident is proof that the guy wasn't good enough for that car.
Absolutely. It's a very
maybe he
capable
wasn't
car.
good enough for any car. But clearly he had bad judgment and probably was a lousy driver.
Totally.
But certainly had terrible judgment. Was he? Who knows if he was sober?
Do you actually qualify people for the track here?
The clubs are the people that run the events here, and yes, they qualify people. Absolutely.
That's cool.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I would say that would be great because keep your incident rate low.
Well, they do it, but also, clubs want to stay in business, so you want people to have fun and come back, and you don't have fun when you crash. So they all start at educational levels and let you move up as you can.
Right, and they progress and they can move into different run groups and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Interesting. Do you do any type of vintage racing here?
Yeah, we have the best vintage event in the East Coast.
Oh, really?
Second best one in the country to all the Monterey Pebble Beach
Right,
stuff.
Pebble Beach, yeah.
And we're gaining fast on them. And that's Labor Day weekend. It's a 4-day event. We have a great concours on the Sunday and car show, 1,000 cars or so.
Wow.
And
That's huge.
And we make our vintage racing be about real cars, not what they call fake cars. You go buy a Mustang and suddenly it's a Shelby Mustang.
Right.
We have we'll have a Trans Am race this Labor Day, and I think we've got 24 guys coming from California. That's where all the real Trans Am cars are. They're not in the East. And so we'll have everything, the old Penske cars, the the Mustangs, everything, the Challengers. That's a wonderful weekend if you wanna go to an event at a road course. That's the best thing in the East by far.
Wow.
Really is. Ralph Lauren brought his cars a couple of years ago. He's never done that, taken them any place except to a museum.
Right. Yeah, he's very, very, very discreet with his collection.
And he's become more discreet over the last 2 years. He's not letting anybody in anywhere near his cars.
We had a nice bunch of them down there all weekend.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I remember when Benny Caiola used to race. I don't think he raced here much.
Do you know the guy?
I don't know the name.
Oh yeah, no, Benny Caiola. He was an interesting story about him. He was a immigrant from Italy. He was the superintendent of a small apartment building in the city, and from there he wound up saving all his money buying that building, and then wound up buying about 100 more.
A great American story, right?
Yeah,
Crazy story.
And he became one of the most
one of the
prominent Ferrari collectors in the United States. He had a collection of Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Paganis. He had the only Zonda in the U.S.
I can't believe I don't know who this
He
guy
had
is.
two Enzos. He had an MC12 Maserati. All his Ferraris he took delivery at the Ferrari factory. He was very small in stature. he raced. He had 2 F40s, one Le Mans. He was on the track. I'm trying to remember. I think it was Watkins Glen in the F40, and he wrecked it. And he walked away from the wreck, went back to his trailer, took the other F40 out, and got right back on the track. So he drove his cars. He also had an FXX.
That's right. He had the FXX.
Yeah.
Out of Spring Hill Ferrari.
Yep. And unfortunately, after his passing from cancer, he fought cancer for a while. His son was going to maintain the collection and decided to sell it. So I know that I'm not sure if he has any cars left, but he sold a bunch of them. He had a 333 SP Ferrari. He had 308s, 328s, 599s.
He had a Nart Daytona.
Yeah, he had a lot of interesting cars. He had a couple of cars that he actually got from Enzo himself. But yeah, interesting collection. He was from Westchester. But yeah, he used to drive his cars all the time. It was quite amazing. So
yeah, he was not too far from Jim Glickenhaus.
Right.
Yeah.
It was another interesting collection.
Jim has an interesting collection also.
Yeah.
Yeah. So well, this was an interesting interview. We got a lot of history.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to tell us about the track? Do you have upcoming events?
Well, if there are any Lime Rock fans out there, we've done an awful lot of improvements here in the last 2 years.
I mean, this place does not look like it did 20 years ago. I can tell you that because that's the last time I was here. It's like a total world of difference. But you're saying in the past couple of years you've made a lot of changes?
Yeah, and we've done everything we can. I mean, we've expanded the paddock. We've really improved the spectator areas, the sight lines, blah, blah, blah. But there's a lot we haven't done. We've expanded the Wi-Fi, but not over the whole property.
I was just going to say, there is Wi-Fi.
Yeah, there is in this end of it.
And I have full cellular signal. Is that because of the elevation problem?
No, we also have added cellular service.
Oh, you have?
Yeah, but not enough. Mm-hmm. And there's more we need to do. We don't have decent scoreboards. We need showers for people that stay here overnight. So we're having a fundraising effort called the Road to 60, and it's named that because Lime Rock will be 60 years old next year.
Oh, okay.
So we're anxious to raise a couple $1 million and from Lime Rock fans, and we have what we think are very attractive programs to make it fun to, in effect, be a sponsor, be a participant. We just started that Memorial Day.
Interesting.
And we have a website, of course.
Okay.
Just wanted to quickly, I was just telling Rod Emery, my friend, who builds 356 Outlaws, and he's the one that coined the term outlaw when it comes to.
Right.
And you're familiar with him.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know him. I'm sure familiar with his
So
cars.
I told him that you acknowledged him and his cars. I just texted him. And he said, "That's rad, but I think you're bullshitting me." And I said, "I'm not." And he said, "I took one of his driving schools back in 1991 at Firebird Raceway."
Possible.
And then he was like, "Where is this podcast going to be?"
And he might have me mixed up with Bob Bondurant. But tell him I have one of the engines made by the Greek, called a Polo motor, in mine. Polo is short for a long Greek name that begins with P-O-L-O. Tell him I've got a 3.4-liter Polo motor.
Well, he's going to listen to this podcast now, so you're, in effect, basically talking to him right now.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. We're having a little trouble with the carburetors.
Oh, he would definitely come out here and help you with anything. Absolutely. He's an incredible human being, truth be told.
And
Seriously, say hello for me.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned earlier there was an IMSA race on the
July 22nd and 23rd, and we will have the GT40s. We've got that class with those cars, the Ferraris,
which are the
Porsche.
New Ford GT40s.
Yes,
the 2017 that
Le
everybody's
Mans winning,
the anticipated car to hit the streets that everybody is jonesing for. From what I understand, the MSRP is $400,000, yet people are willing to pay $1 million for it.
Yeah, but it keeps going up. But
yeah.
I think it's irrelevant because nobody's going to get it for as low as the theoretical retail price.
Right. Well, Ford dealers are allowed to mark up. They're not restricted. Like even this Ford Focus, they were asking $5,000 over.
Yeah.
And now the Ford is saying that you cannot sell the car for a period of 12 months. They're
Yeah.
going to hold the title.
Ferrari started that.
Yeah. They started out LaFerrari's 18 months. Interesting enough, there are people that will sell it. They'll hold the title. You'll have to get your own insurance and binders and all sorts of crazy stuff. It's nuts.
It's crazy.
Steve Wynn sold his LaFerrari, and he owns a Ferrari dealership. So he basically told his own franchise to go screw themselves.
Which is pretty crazy.
It is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the IMSA race. So if you guys want to check it out, the website, is it just limerock.com or limerock?
LimeRockPark.com.
limerockpark.com. Check it out for the schedule. If you're interested in any type of club racing, stuff like that, I'm sure there's information online. Me being with Exotics Rally, we do. I actually do track events. We usually try to do one a year. I usually do Pocono because I had a partner on it, and we have since parted ways where he doesn't do the rentals anymore. So maybe we'll talk. Maybe we'll put something together.
Yeah, you ought to look at this place. We're done with this, right?
No, we're still on the air.
Okay. This is an awful nice place to drive. It's a neat racetrack. It's a neat part of the world. The ride here is pretty
I
good.
loved it.
You
That was
can
a-
come. You can
Through
come
that
up along
backcountry road.
Well, there's a lot
was
of
fun.
them. You can come from a lot of different directions. It's hard to get it wrong. And we're very accommodating. Seriously, we've got a terrific full-time chef, and it's a good place to do stuff like that.
Yeah, I usually do two different types of events, which a lot of our listeners know about. You can find it at exoticsrally.com. Sometimes we do fundraisers where it's a one-day event where we, drive to a destination, we have a lunch, and maybe do some parade laps around a track just so people can see the facility. And then I do another event which is purely for track day, which we've historically done at either Monticello, New Jersey Motorsport Park, or Pocono. Yeah, we stopped going to New Jersey Motorsport Park a couple of years ago for several reasons. Monticello got too pricey, even though I know them all. It's still very, we'll just leave it at that. And Pocono, like I said, I had a partner on it where we rented it, but that is kind of a boring track.
Yeah.
It's a go-fast track. That's all it is, which I do like to go fast, but I do like a challenging track. So, and a lot of my people are asking about it, so maybe we'll have to look into that and see what we can entertain.
Do. And later on today, if you meet Simon Kirkby, who I told to look for you.
Certainly.
He's the guy that runs our club. You can talk to him about it.
Yeah, we're going to try to
definitely.
get Seth's new Ford Focus RS on track. We're definitely going to try to get my GT3 on track.
Yeah.
I've got cup tires. I'm ready.
Oh, yeah, you're ready. It's ready for launch control in the parking lot.
Yeah, it works. Anyway, we're going to wrap up this podcast.
Let Skip get back to his busy schedule.
Yeah, Skip's got a lot of stuff to do. And let me just say that I just want to say from both of us, and Suresh in the background, thank you for taking time out of
Absolutely.
your busy schedule
My
to meet
pleasure.
with us.
I feel
wasn't-
incredibly
this
honored,
wasn't-
honestly,
no,
just to
come
be
on,
in your
this-
presence.
This wasn't hard for me. This is easy.
Yeah, well, we enjoyed
this was fun.
We enjoyed your company. It's a good time. We had some good conversation. Our listeners are going to love it. We urge everybody to check out limerockpark.com. You can find Tminus at
T__car lifestyle on Instagram.
And you've suddenly embarrassed me. It might be limerock.com.
Oh, Lime Rock.
Google Lime Rock Racetrack in Connecticut, and you cannot miss it.
You can't miss it. It is awesome.
You cannot miss it. You can find me at Exotics Rally, at Art of Rap NY, at My Vet Rental, and I'm sure you're all bored with how many different ads I have. But check us out online, also Car Lifestyle, and our newest venture, which is Car Lifestyle Exchange. Buy and sell your cars online on Instagram. Check it out. It's free for now. Get in there while it is, and you could sign up for the app and start advertising your cars.
Absolutely.
And I think
And that's it. It's a wrap.
that's a wrap.
Car Lifestyle.